Welcome back to the podcast. Gabe and I, we are joined by Kristi O'Connell, 7-time CrossFit Games competitor, marathon runner that could be significantly faster than any time that I can even imagine, which I'm super excited to talk about. And just a mindset, I'd say just a very incredibly powerful mindset that you have going into these races that we definitely want to dive into today. So Kristi, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here. Congratulations on all you've accomplished from your endurance racing to CrossFit, and good morning.
Yeah, good morning. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to chat with you guys.
Awesome.
Man, so I'll kick it off because I reached out to you, Kristi, because I've been following the fact that you were training to break 3 hours, specifically because I was training for exactly the same thing. I unfortunately got hit with this like sciatic pain, and I ended up not doing Houston. I was training for Houston in January. Big bummer. But I come from an endurance background, so I was a triathlete, swam all through college, got hit by the CrossFit bug, was never anywhere nearly as competitive as the two of you. But now I've kind of like gone back into running, and it's been so fun. And you've talked about that too, because I know you had a running background before, and it's been so fun to get back into it. And also like, I think that one thing that I want to talk to you about as well is like completely, going in the face of this story that I was told for a while that you couldn't do both, that I kind of had to like leave endurance completely behind, and I couldn't do that anymore if I wanted to be strong or if I wanted to do the CrossFit thing or lift. And now going back to it and still maintaining some of those other things has been really cool for me. So I was following your training and leading up to the race. And so I sent you a message, I wanted to wish you good luck. And I saw that not only did you break 3 hours, but you broke 250, which is huge. And then I listened to your recap of the race, and I just think there's so much to unpack there, from like the training leading up to it, your, expectation, the goal kind of shifting because training was maybe going even better than you had expected, then like the doubt during the race, getting sore and just overcoming that. Because what I love about endurance in general, with CrossFit, there's a huge benefit to your mind kind of shuts off, right? Like, yes, there's some pacing, there's some strategy, but it's almost like too quick. But when you're out there doing something that's, 2.5 hours, 3 hours, 3.5, 4 hours, you have a lot of time to think. You're thinking through so many things. There's so many things happening. You can potentially, stumble, go off pace, but still kind of come back. So much to unpack there. I think a good place to start, or at least the first question I had, is what got you from 7-time CrossFit Games athlete to, hey, I want to get back into running. I want to get back into endurance?
Yeah, it sounds like we have very similar backgrounds. I swam in college. I was doing triathlons.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and then I had a friend who was like, you got to try this CrossFit thing. So I caught the CrossFit bug, and then I just didn't look back because it was the same thing. I really thought that if I wanted to be good at this CrossFit thing, I had to leave that behind to be as strong as possible. And so CrossFit taught me a ton from a mindset, but I think there's a lot, and there's just differences when it comes to that endurance world. But what got me back into it, honestly, was we started a 5K a day. I had not been running. Like, I would do a track session for speed, power, a little bit of endurance, just in case something like that would show up at the CrossFit Games. And I always loved those, but those were my last sessions of the week after a hard week's training. Like, there was no focus or there was no priority behind those. And so when we started doing this 5K a day, you could walk it, you could ruck it, you could run it, whatever you wanted to do. It was just getting people moving. And I started with walking, and then I slowly started to run just slower and more. And I remember running to the gym, which was like 6 miles. And my husband was like, oh, you ran here? I was like, yeah, I feel really good. Like, I'm starting to really enjoy this again. And this was probably 15 days into that 5K a day. So there's, even in those first 2 weeks, there's that, oh, do I really want to go out and do this 5K? You get into it, you love it, you enjoy it. You're like, oh, why didn't I want to do it in the first place? So starting with that 5K a day just got me back into running. And we had a group at the gym that had signed up for the half marathon, and my husband had never run a half marathon. So this was back in 2022, right after I finished my last CrossFit Games. I was like, let's do this. Let's do something different. I haven't run a race in over 10 years. Like, it'll be really fun. It'll be your first race. We'll do it together. And he was like, no, like, if I'm doing the half, like, you should re-sign up for the full. Let's just see how fast you can run. Like, no pressure, no stress, just go do it. And so I was like, okay. So I shifted my training, and that's ultimately how I got back into running. Was he did his first half marathon. I did another full, which was 10 years after, maybe a little bit more. And then I actually ended up PRing that one, which that just opened my mind just to so much and just kind of led to where we are today. So 5K a day got me back into it.
At that point, did you already know that was going to be your last CrossFit Games, or was that a decision you made after?
That I didn't know after 2022. I could tell that I was longing for something else. Like I still enjoy CrossFit. I enjoy the challenge of it, but it wasn't fulfilling me in the way that it had in the past. And so after I ran that marathon and just being part of the race, Columbus gets like 15,000 runners, just seeing the fireworks go off, feeling the energy, just being part of something else in a community-driven way, almost made me feel like more fulfilled and more excited than I had with anything that I had experienced in CrossFit recently. And at that point, when I crossed that finish line, I was like, I think I'm done with CrossFit. Not thinking I'd go into running. I just felt like this might be time for me to move on. And so I spent that was October. I took until February just reflecting on that, just making sure I was taking the time to make that decision.
I have a quick question on this. I pulled up your rankings over the years, and it's really impressive. I mean, from a CrossFit Games perspective, to have as many top 10 finishes as you had at the World Championships is like really good. I don't know how many other people have had that many top 10s across that many years. So awesome. It means you're super well-rounded and you're a total badass. But I'm curious, from racing, like, what are the physical demands and how have they shifted from you when you were competing at the CrossFit Games for that many years, taking top 10s, and now with your current goals? Would you say you spend more or less time training? I'm just curious. Like,
oh gosh, this is a conversation I have regularly with my husband. Drastically less.
Drastically less.
Yes. I can balance my life, our business, our priorities, like drastically less than when I was training for the CrossFit Games.
And is that, because I feel like that's kind of a surprising answer, right? I feel like a lot of people listening maybe are like, you're training for these longer distances, you have to go out, you have to get your zone 2 time, like all of that is maybe and we can talk about how much of that is like misconception or truth. Is it strictly because like you're only training this one thing now versus with CrossFit, like you pretty much have to do everything?
Yeah, I think that honestly is what ultimately is kind of fun about it as well, is like you can track that linear progress on that specific race a little bit differently. Where in the CrossFit Games, you can track linear progress when it comes to strength. Like, did my squat improve? Did my deadlift improve? Can I do more unbroken pull-ups? Things like that. But when you're training for these races, like I can break my week down and I have one focus. Where with CrossFit, there's so many different focus that it's like you're trying to get in as much as possible. And sometimes that would be 2-3 hour sessions, maybe a third session in the evening doing more zone 2 work. And so it's because there's so many different things that you have to train, that you have to be good at, and you only have 7 days. And I like to take a full rest day. It's like, where do you fit these into these 6 days? And so with running and training for one race, it's just a little bit more clear on, okay, here's what I need to do. How are we going to fit this in? How can I progress? Focused on this one thing.
I was reading something you wrote about, and the 80-20, you like basically called it like the 80-20 rule, which I think was great because a lot of people talk about like the 23-1 rule where you have 1 hour in the gym and 23 hours to mess it up. And I love the way you broke it down. I haven't heard it that way of like 80-20 of like slow runs or like not super hard, for lack of a better term, and then 20% hard. And I definitely would love to talk about that because I think there is a misconception that a lot of your runs have to be super hard. But it sounds like with the 80-20, it's like just getting time on your feet, getting, reps in. So what is that? Like, what does your current training look like with 80-20 rule?
Yeah, so 80-20 has changed my life. And that's been a challenge coming from a higher intensity background.
Yeah.
And I think the way that I'm wired, if I don't feel like I'm going and I didn't crush myself and end up laying on my back at the end of the session, I didn't get anything out of it. And I had to completely shift my mindset on that because that's not true. And once I was finally able to shift my mindset, I saw progress running. And so 80-20 is kind of also talking about this gray zone. A lot of us struggle, and myself included, with pulling back and actually running easy, staying in what a lot of people have coined as zone 2. So you should be able to have a conversation. It should actually feel easy. And so like if you're going out and, my easy run, so I ran my marathon around a 6:25, 6:24 pace. My easy runs are 8:30 to 9 minutes. Yeah. So it's like I'm 2.5 minutes slower on those easy runs at times. And so it's understanding it's time on the feet. It's allowing your body to make these adaptations, but also it helps you recover So then when you have these hard sessions, you can truly go hard. And so what I was doing is I was kind of in the gray zone a lot where I wasn't running my easy runs easy enough. So I wasn't getting the benefit of that. And I also wasn't able to recover. But then that wouldn't allow me to put my best foot forward on my hard runs. So I wasn't able to hit maybe the paces if I would have taken those easy runs a little easier. So looking at your week, it's like really 80% of those runs should be spent for time on feet, for building that aerobic adaptation, for getting the miles in, and they're not going to beat you up. When I was doing too much hard running, it's like then I'm starting to experience more nagging injuries. It's a little bit more demanding on the body. And so understanding how to just break that up and what that can actually do for the progress of your running. But it can be an ego check, and it's a mindset shift, because otherwise, like if you're not willing to check your ego before you go out for that run, you run too hard, and now you've just kind of taken away from potentially how good the next session could be, which is your hard session.
Jason is the perfect example of the infamous gray zone. So me and Jason, we ended up, I remember seeing you. I don't think we like bumped into each other or anything at Dallas for the High Rocks race. And so me and Jason were preparing to do that as a team. And I remember he would like send me pictures of his runs. And I was like, dude, you're running too fast. Like you're supposed to go out there and do like 40 minutes, like nice and easy. He's like, yeah, my pace was a little bit better this week than last week. And I was like, no, that's not the point, Jason. And, but I completely get how tough that is. Even harder for you, Jay, because like you don't even have the endurance background that Kristi has before that. Like you've known CrossFit through and through, and it is really tough to break away from that. Like, hey, it's 0 to 100 or you're not getting a good workout. Super tough. But yeah, I remember giving you a hard time.
We should discuss that real quick, because I haven't heard of it as like the gray zone. I mainly am focused on the red zone. So I'm typically shooting for the red zone. Then there's, I guess, the black, the white, and the gray. But I think it's a really important topic to discuss. I don't want to call it, I think what CrossFit has done really well, and I got into it really early, was it shared intensity, and how that intensity created such a great adaptation. But I wonder if as a community, we like almost we have gone too far in the sense of like, if it isn't like leaving you on your back gassed, you didn't do it right. And I wonder how we balance that. And maybe that's because if 80% of your runs are like moderate and if 20% are hard, well, in CrossFit, it would be like literally the complete, it'd be like 90% should leave you on your back and 10% should be like auxiliary work.
100%. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I guess, what do you think the future looks like for people, I guess, like me, like all of us, right? Where we come from this background where it's like, dude, and it feels so good when you just redline, you're just like throttled. It doesn't feel like, I mean, at least maybe I'm just like sick in the head. Like I went to jiu-jitsu this morning and I just was like laying on my back toast. And I'm like, dude, I did something good today. But if I just left, I was like, oh, that was fun. I wouldn't feel like I got as much out of it. How do you balance that mindset?
Yeah, I think that's the hardest part, honestly. And like I am wired to want to go to the red zone. It's like, if I didn't end up there, like how did I even do anything today? And so I think that is where specifically training for the marathon, like I had this end goal and it helped me work towards that. But I do think that it's kind of like you hear people talk a lot about, you know, if you water a plant too much, like it's just not going to survive. And so I think sometimes like too much intensity can be too much. If you're not recovering and you're not seeing progress, then maybe you're doing too much. But I love CrossFit, and like that's been my life for the last 12, 13, 14 years. It's just at some point as I get older, I realize like I don't have the intensity that I can bring to the level every single day. And so it's understanding like how to work those workouts in. But I think it could be different for everybody in their situation. If somebody's only getting 15 to 30 minutes a day, like maybe they do need a little bit more intensity. If their goal isn't to go run a 3+ hour race, then maybe they need to keep that intensity in there. And so I think it's kind of evaluating like your personal goals in your life and where you are also. But it's just the mindset shift is the hardest piece, and understanding like what's my end goal and what am I hoping to achieve out of this, and then kind of aligning your training around that.
Kristi, do you think that is a piece of what the difference between like this new hybrid training versus CrossFit kind of boils down to? Like giving people the permission to now have like, hey, this is when you do strength and possibly like a HIIT type workout, but then the hybrid aspect of it is that this is when you do this like easier work over here. And it just, some of it is semantics, but it kind of gives you permission to have the easier days, because whether this is true or not, or how it's taught in the L1, CrossFit does come off as like, you kind of got to go in there and red zone every day. Like, it's all about intensity.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to look at it. I never really thought of it like that with hybrid, like that you get easier days. Honestly, I think I just thought of it more as breaking it up into to working as two things simultaneously. So still continuing to maintain and build a strong back squat and feel very explosive and powerful, but having days that I can go out and run long and far. And I'm not going to be able to run long and far in zone 5. Like, if I was running that marathon in zone 5, by mile 1, I'm done. Like, I'm toast. I gave everything I had in mile 1. So I think it's just learning how to be in those different zones. But I do think with CrossFit, I think that you can have the intensity, but I think you could still have the intention within the day. So like, most people can't go 5 days 100% all out. Like, at some point they're going to experience some sort of dip so their body can recover. And so maybe it's understanding or having ego, like we kind of talked about with the 80-20 rule when you're going into CrossFit, of I went really hard on Monday and Tuesday and I'm really happy with how those workouts went. I can tell I'm pretty tired today. So maybe I'll just pull back a little bit. Like, I still need to keep my schedule, my routine. It makes me a better person. It makes me feel better. But maybe I'll come in and I'll go 70% effort today. I'll move. I'll feel good. I'll still get really great benefits. And then I can come back tomorrow a little bit more recovered and hit it a little bit harder. And I think that could be introduced more into that CrossFit world a little bit. But I think with the hybrid approach too, I think that it's just, you're seeing people enjoy the longer time domains again. And I think that, like, if you look at High Rocks, most people are 60 to 90 minutes.
Right.
Regular, and that you're working for 60 to 90 minutes, which means they're going to be doing longer workouts throughout the week, which means they're going to be testing that mental capacity throughout the week in different ways, rather than just a 5 to 12 minute workout. And you learn a lot about yourself at 30 minutes, at 40 minutes, at 50 minutes, at 60 plus minutes. And I think that that's a lot of the draw for people as well, is now getting these longer workouts into their training more regularly, which will naturally have to lower the intensity slightly because you can't be in zone 5 for 60 plus minutes.
I want to ask about that real quick. If you had asked me 10 years ago, maybe even 20 years ago when I first started a gym, a lot of people had a difficult time in CrossFit eliciting the response we were looking for. So let's just take a workout like Fran. The intended stimulus, which is thrusters and pull-ups, the intended stimulus is to get it done in, for the sake of argument, 5 to 8 minutes. Let's just say 10 minutes tops. Right? You'd have some people come into the gym and they understood that. They'd scale it, they'd go crazy, and they'd be laying on their back. You'd have other people, and I wouldn't understand this, they would just kind of like go casual. And when they were done, it wasn't enough volume, it wasn't enough time to really elicit anything. They just like kind of got done. And I used to think to myself, like, these people need to develop more mindsets so that they could push harder and go harder on these like short duration, like sprinty workouts. But now that I'm like kind of older and I'm thinking about it, what do you think is tougher? Is it tougher mentally to push yourself for like a 7-minute go-getter, like burpee dumbbell snatch? Or do you think it's tougher to like, go at your pace, go pretty hard for like an hour? Because when we did the High Rocks together, our time was 106. It should, next time we're going to get 56, but our time was 106. And dude, that was a long ass time and it sucked. I mean, especially like we did one earlier where we did like a test one and that one just throttled me. So I guess my question for you, Chrissy, is like, I used to think that you had to be mentally tough to sprint like a 7-minute workout. And sure, I think you do, but maybe now I'm kind of switching my tune a little bit, that like you could actually get a lot of mental toughness when you're like in that hour or 2 hour zone. So like, what is your take there? Because you've obviously done both.
That's a really interesting question. And I think it could be different per person. Like, I see a under 7-minute workout. I see a 3-minute workout and I'm just like shaking in my boots. Like, I know how bad this is going to hurt. I have to really step up. But I think the difference is I know it's 3 minutes and I'm done.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, I can do anything for 3 minutes. Like, what I don't want to feel is the regret after. Like, I should have tried harder. And in that's what gives me that feeling of like, oh, I'm shaking because I know how bad this 3 minutes is going to hurt. But the good news is it's 3 minutes. And I think the difference is, I think the more of the mental test comes in the longer, because you're going to experience a lot of different emotions and a lot of different periods throughout those longer time domains, where the first 10 minutes, you could start to be like, okay, I got this. I feel really good. You kind of settle in. And then all of a sudden 30 minutes hits and you might experience some sort of energy dip, or you might be mentally starting to fatigue and lose focus. And you have to pull yourself out of that because maybe you're only a quarter of the race in, or you're halfway through the race. And so I think there's more, I think they're both they require mental toughness for both in very different ways of being able to get yourself able to push hard for the 3 minutes, as hard as you know that you're capable to push. And then I think for the 2+ hour or 90 minutes plus or whatever, it's being able to quiet the negative thoughts that will come into your head at some point, knowing that you can sustain the pace that you're working and keep that pace, even though you might have 40+ minutes. So I think they're both very challenging, but in very different ways.
Yeah, that's interesting. You broke it up that way. As you spoke, and Gabe, I'm curious, I know you had wrote some notes about the book Endure, but as you spoke, what I picked up on is that for that short workout, you're afraid because you know the pain, right? But you're not afraid that you're going to quit. You're not afraid that you're going to whatever. But I think for the longer events, I think the reason why it's mentally taxing is because doubt comes in. There's a lot of to your point, many different emotions that you occur over the span of 2 to 3 hours. Whereas in a short sprint, the only thing you're scared of is the pain that's going to come. Maybe that's the way that I'm thinking about that. It's just a different mindset.
Yeah. I was going to say, I think that's spot on for kind of what I was inferring there. And the other piece of the longer races is I literally was looking at my husband before my last marathon. I was like, I know I'm prepared. I know I'm ready, but there's still an unknown race.
Yeah.
There's still an unknown with a race this long. And so there's a lot of things that may come up that you're just not expecting in those longer races. And so mentally being able to just control what you can control throughout that longer duration, where in the 3 minutes, it's not as likely to happen. But Gabe, I'd be curious what you thought too.
No, for sure. I mean, I was going to ask, what events did you swim in college?
So I actually was a sprint breaststroker. So I swam
Really?
100 and 200 breaststroke, and I actually preferred the 50, which was only 2 laps, but that was only in a relay in college. So I was a sprinter. Yeah.
Well, it was funny because as you guys are talking about this, there's very similar to, because I swam butterfly and distance, and same thing, right? When you're swimming one of the sprints, you maybe you have to definitely nail your turns, and there's a little bit of anxiety there because that can make and break your race, but that's pretty much it. In the long distance events, you're thinking about you have to settle in, a lot of things can happen. You're trying to ride up on the lane if you can, there's so much that goes into it. And it's obviously different time domains, because in swimming, you're looking at something that's as short as a 20-second race to, on the long end, maybe 15 minutes, but it's almost all the same things that you guys were talking about, right? With running. Jason mentioned the book Endure. Have you read Endure? Not the Goggins Endure. I actually
have not, but I'm always looking for new books. So I'll definitely
highly recommend it. So okay. I'm a slow reader, and I read 2 pages a night because I fall asleep right away, but I'm 1/3 of the way through this book. And it talks all about the psychological limits of endurance and all these studies that have basically, challenge the idea that I can know how fast you're going to run based off of your running efficiency, your VO2 max, and your lactate threshold. No, there's a completely psychological aspect to it as well. And it goes through a lot of these really cool stories. One story is this lady who had a condition where she was having seizures, had to have a surgery, and it impacted the area in her brain that also gave her short-term memory. And she was a runner already, but she became a world record setting ultramarathoner, in large part because she could never really focus or think about what she had done already or what she's going to do in the future. She just can't think about, hey, I have 50 miles left, or I've done 50 miles. Her brain is just focused on the present, and it's allowed her to have this ability to just keep going. So the whole argument is that a lot of what limits people in these longer races, sure, obviously your VO2 max and fitness level, that all plays a role. But we all know that there's plenty left in the physical tank at any given point. A lot of it is your mind trying to tell you to stop because it's trying to protect you from doing something that's super risky. That's a big reason that everyone has a kick at the end of the race, or most people do, right? You never finish even your marathon, I'm sure, completely like, like bottomed out. You have like a little bit left in the tank. And a part of that is because your mind knows, hey, I'm done, after this 400 meter, 800 meter. So it's a really interesting book because it talks all about that. It talks all about like your brain and the actual psychology of like limiting your performance in these things. And then the question that I had, because I was thinking about this as I was listening to the wrap up of your race that you recorded with Patrick, is there was one moment where you heard someone say that their legs hurt and immediately your legs got sore. And I thought that was such a good example of like, I don't know, maybe if you never heard that, you would never even have been like, wow, my legs are really sore and it's only 6 miles into the race. Do you think there's anything to that? I'm curious since the experience is so fresh.
I absolutely think there's something to that. I think that your chatter plays such a huge role. And I practiced that in training. I would come home, or we could talk about the legs sore in the race first, but that happened. I'm not used to running hills. So where I live is extremely flat. Like I looked everywhere. There's not a lot of hills around. So I knew this race was going to be a challenge for that reason. But I also know from all the CrossFit that I've done, like I've done lots of reps. I'm familiar with what it feels like to have lactic acid in your muscles, like when you're running. I just didn't really want to experience that early on in the race. And so it was a very steep downhill and people took off. Like I was like, oh boy, like I have no idea what we're in for. This is a 26-mile race, not like a 200-meter dash.
And to
then
start, it had a quick, like a downhill.
Yeah, I think it was like 400-foot drop, like right, like it was downhill. I think, yeah. So the first 4 miles, because they take you up to a mountain and you run in the dark downhill. And so I don't know if you guys ever run in the dark, but for me, I'll run in the morning, headlamp, whatever, but I don't race in the dark ever. And so that was just a little bit discombobulating as well. But so you go downhill, which is actually harder on your quads because you're trying to slow yourself down.
Right.
And all of the impact. And so then you turn and you go uphill, and it was about like a 4 to 6% uphill grade for about 1.5 miles. That I didn't mind, but then you have another downhill. And it was on that second downhill, I was in a pack of guys, and we had just crossed around the 6 or 7 mile mark, and they were talking about their quads. And I hadn't thought about my quads at all until I heard them say that. And all of a sudden I became like hyper focused on my quads, realizing I could feel them. It wasn't like, oh, these feel really good right now. It's like, oh boy, like I feel like they're already sore. Like I'm only 6 miles in. What's going on? And then I'm starting to think about, well, what if they cramp? Well, then I'm out of the race, and then the whole plan gets shot in the foot. And so that was crazy. I did a few strides to get away from that group because I didn't want to continue to hear them talking about that, because my focus was just kind of getting zoned in on how my quads felt. When I would remove myself, I was like, no, you feel good. You weren't thinking about that. Like you actually feel good. It's fine. You've trained with tired legs. Like you're good to go. And so I also noticed the mental chatter aspect. I just think people really focus on the sleep, the training, like all of those things matter, but really what goes on between your 2 ears, I think, is one of the most important pieces. And I could physically look at my paces when I was out running these 22 mile runs, and I was practicing, like, I didn't want to go out. It was cold. Some days I had to do it on the treadmill because it was icy. It's the last thing I wanted to do on a treadmill. And it's like telling myself, like, I am proud of myself. I'm proud of you for doing this work. Like you set a goal, you're here to do this work. I'm grateful that your body's able to do this, and just going through like this checklist of things that are positive instead of shifting from, oh, it's really cold outside, or it's icy, or I just really don't feel like doing this. I'd rather be sitting on the couch with my dog, or whatever it may be. And it's like shifting that mindset into that positive chatter. And I could literally watch my pace, my heart rate would come down, my pace would drop slightly. It's like you just find this calm, almost like moving meditation. And it's amazing how we can get so stressed, so anxious, so worked up about just this mental chatter that's happening inside of our head. And there's a lot of times we're unaware. It's just these thoughts are driving us. And so it's if you can be aware of what you're thinking and how that's affecting what you're doing, it can make a huge difference for you.
I had 2 follow-ups, but go ahead, Gabe.
Well, I was just going to say, and all of that applies so much to real life, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like all of that. You can just remove it from running a marathon, and it's like, yeah. And we all do it, right? Like it's something we all fall into.
And speaking of real life,
not that racing isn't real life, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Speaking of real life in a race, which is whatever, there's this group mentality, right? So you talk about, hey, you're running with a group of guys. And I would not have been in that group because you would have been running significantly faster than me. But let's just say you're running a group of guys, right? You got 5 guys, you're kind of drafting off them. it's a really interesting analogy for life. And I'm curious what you've seen in all the races you've done and all the training you've done. Because if you have the right training partners, if you have the right racers with you, it does nothing but elevate you. You could draft, you could find their cadence, you could benefit from just this positive encouragement. You could name the pros. But I've also been in bad packs, right? Where you got the guy who's like, dude, my legs are shot. Like, I don't know if I could carry on this pace. And then all of a sudden it starts. So I guess, how does that equate for you? Like when you're going into a race, are you trying to look for groups to join? Do you like being solo? And then I guess like, dude, it just totally relates to real life. Now that I'm even saying it, it's like if you surround yourself with positive people that are trying to strive for goals, that's only going to help you. If you don't do that, then obviously if you surround yourself with people that aren't goal setting, aren't whatever, it's going to take you a step back. So when you're approaching a race, I guess my question is, are you looking for groups? Are you already ahead of time saying, hey, let's run together, or not really?
Yeah, there's a couple thoughts I have on that also relate to the gym and life as well. But when I sign up for these races, no. And it's interesting how it's unfolded. So I did my first ultramarathon last April, so almost a year ago. And I got in the best group with a guy and a girl. And we ran about 30 miles together. And it was the most enjoyable experience I've ever had. And we just happened to be running a similar pace and found each other probably around, so I guess we didn't run the whole 30. We probably found each other around 8-9 mile mark. And she didn't know him. She had found him. And then I had kind of stumbled on the two of them and just jumped in with them. And that made that race so enjoyable. I'm like, I don't know if my next one would be as enjoyable, because it was so great just having this energy and this little cohort or community of people that I got to run with. Like that was incredible. And it was similar for this race. I kind of picked, there was a 2:55 and a 3-hour pace because the new Boston, they dropped their time. So men, certain age group, if you want to qualify for Boston, you have to run a 2:55. So now these races are having 2:55 pacers, which I thought was super cool because I've never seen that. So I knew I wanted to be around 3 hours. So I kind of was like, well, if I'm between these two, this is a good place to start.
And they have a guy there. I'm sorry to cut you off, but they have a guy there who's like wearing like a yellow shirt that is going to run a 2:55.
They hold a stick and a sign.
It's the most impressive thing ever.
Yes. And they're just like,
no, stop it.
Yeah. They literally hold a stick with the sign so you can see it. That it's just, they're running with it the whole time.
Isn't that so humiliating? You're like trying to PR a race running this time. So you're just following the guy that's doing it casually with a stick.
Yeah.
Wait, he has and it has like a sign, like a square sign. So he's like, that's it the whole time.
Yeah, just like a piece of paper or something that's written. I'm sure it's like doesn't blow around. So I'm sure it's something sturdy enough, but it's like the size of a computer screen probably. And it says whatever pace, and they'll run them like every 5 or 10 minutes. So like 2:55, 3 hours. So if you hang on to that pacer, you should hit that time.
And do they, I'm sorry, but do they switch off the pacer, or does the same guy do it the whole time?
Same guy does it the whole time.
No.
Yeah, I'm always I think it's the most impressive thing. I'm like, now that's goals. So I kind of like, for this race, I was like, well, they're good pacers. Like, I'll just kind of go right between them, knowing I want to be around that 3-hour mark. I just got to be in front of the guy and I'll be sub 3 hours. And so I kind of looked around. I'll talk to people. I love chatting with people, but it's never like, hey, let's run together, because I don't know them. I've never run with them. You don't know how they're going to run their race. And so it's kind of just like, naturally happens. And so typically I'll just start at the start. Everybody's paces are usually all over the place. Like a lot of times you'll get people that start really slow that end up building in, people who start really fast kind of die off. So it's kind of like people are everywhere. And so usually I don't think that shakes out for the first in a longer race. Like probably around 6 to 8 miles is typically where I'll try to settle in with somebody. And sometimes it's like people are feeling good, and this has happened plenty of times, is like you're running with somebody and maybe you're feeling good and they're not feeling as good, and they'll kind of start to pull back. So mentally, here's another mental challenge. You have to be prepared. Like, I really enjoyed running with this person, but they're wanting to pull back and I'm feeling good. Should I go, or should I stay comfortable and pull back?
Do they say anything, or like, are you guys talking at all?
Sometimes I've had that happen. So, this race I was running with somebody, and he was like, you seem like you're feeling good. Like, I'm going to drop back 10-second per mile pace. And it's like, okay, I'm just going to keep going. Good luck with your race. And so it's like really little conversations throughout there. This race was interesting. So I actually didn't think I was going to find my little special group of people or person like I had in the ultra, because it was like that mile 6. So I stride up to the next person. I ran with, or kind of behind people. They weren't really talking. Everyone was pretty quiet. Saw my parents a couple times, just kind of running around. And I was running with one guy, and he kind of slowed down. We didn't talk at all. And then somehow, I don't even know what happened. I ended up behind, there's like 3 young kids and another guy next to me. And so there's 5 of us. And they were gliding. And I was like, well, they're good. Like, let's just see if they can keep blocking the wind and I could just hang on with them. And so nobody said anything for probably like 2 miles. And finally the guy next to me, who he wasn't with them and I didn't know that, he asked him what pace they were going to run. And they had set their goal as 2:49. And he was hoping to run a 2:55. And so I looked at him and I was like, well, what was your goal? He said 2:55, but I'm going to try to hang on to these 3 kids as long as I can. And he didn't say kids, but these 3 guys. And I was like, okay, me too. So then they actually started pulling back. And this guy, he was from Indiana. He was like, I feel good. I was like, I feel good. So we just kind of stuck together. And then him and I did talk the whole way. It was like one of those things where you just kind of find that person that it's like, if they can do it, I can do it. And I think they're feeling the same. And so you kind of just become this little community, or you push each other forward and you hold each other accountable. And it's like, we would ask each other, how are you feeling? I feel good. Okay, me too. Let's hold this pace. And so it's little things like that. And I've never even met this person, but you're just helping each other. And like at the end, I actually waited. He around mile 24, he's like, you seem like you feel good, like go. And so I ended and gave him a hug because it was like, I could have never done that without him. He kept being like, I feel good. Me too. Let's hold this pace. And so it's like those little moments of just encouragement. And you're like, okay, if this guy can do it, like I can do it. I'm going to stay with him. It's just that little bit of accountability. So kind of long way to answer that. I do think you find your groups, but I never go in like at the start line asking people. It just kind of naturally starts to pan out and you kind of find somebody who has a similar stride or a similar cadence. And honestly, I feel like the energy was good and it just felt right. And so just kind of sticking with that person and holding each other accountable. But I do think also what I was going to say prior is with gyms, I've experienced that as well. Is I've gone into some really great training environments where you come out and you're just super energized and you're like, that was such a great session. I can't wait to show up and do that again tomorrow. And then I've also gone into some training sessions that I don't really want to use the word toxic, but it's just like the energy wasn't right. The energy wasn't there and you don't get your best session. And it also doesn't leave you feeling like you want to continue to come back to that. And so I think it's a good thing to recognize like, hey, how is the energy? Is this helping me? Is this inspiring me to achieve my goals? Or am I surrounding myself with people that are actually maybe uninspired, or they're not helping inspire me, but they're almost making me not feel like I want to continue to achieve those goals? And I think that can go in life with friendships. I think that can go with business. I think it can go in gyms with running races. And I think it's just important to evaluate your circle.
I don't run marathons very often. Do people typically...
Have you ever run a marathon, Jay?
I've ran a marathon, not like so I ran the San Francisco half marathon, like a formal one. And then I've ran 2 marathons prior to that, but not like sanctioned. So I just did, because with Chris Hinshaw, we would run to prepare for the CrossFit Games. We would hit marathon marks just to prepare, but I never did like a sanctioned one, just like on my Garmin or whatever, I do have a goal of doing one at some point. It doesn't super call to me, but it does call to me. Like I want to be able to say like, hey, I did this marathon in particular. So I probably will do one, Gabe. But Chrissy, you may not be able to, like, I don't run very well and I feel heavy. Like my legs feel like bricks. And not like after like 10 miles. Like I'm talking like after like a mile, I feel like I'm just sludging through. So I'm curious on the treadmill. You brought up the treadmill, and I know where you live, it's a little bit different than where I live. I live in California. We don't have to worry as much about ice. I'm curious where you're at with the treadmill. Do you find it, are you on a self-propelled treadmill, or are you on like a regular treadmill?
So we have one that's motorized, but it also has a mode that's called run free. So I can turn off like that. It will hold the pace and it kind of goes off of my cadence, but it is a motorized treadmill.
Yeah. I'm just wondering, like, is that harder for you? For me, mentally on a treadmill, it's harder than being outside. Is that the same for you or no?
Oh yeah. I struggle so much being on a treadmill. I don't know if it's that I just don't have things passing, because there's a lot of studies that say like when things are passing, what that does for your psychological, your brain, and like how that keeps you going. But for me, I just struggle. I don't enjoy it as much. I'll do it because I know that I need to get it done, and that's the option. And I'm grateful that I even have that option. But yeah, I find my stride, I find my pacing, I find it just to feel more laborious to hold the same paces on a treadmill, even if it's motorized, than I do outside. And I do know there's quite a few people that I've talked to that'll do 50 or 70% of their training on a treadmill. You can do that. Like if that's your jam, and there's some people that love a treadmill, you can absolutely do that. And then race outside. Like it kind of just depends on what fits your life and what fits your schedule and what you enjoy.
Yeah. I'm curious about your life. Talk to us more about like your relationship. How long have you been married for? Like, what's going on there?
Yeah, so Patrick and I, we met in 2013. So we've been together. I actually met him through CrossFit. So he was in my first CrossFit gym that I joined. He had been doing CrossFit for many years before. And then he helped me throughout. He had been doing the whole competing thing. So he did all of the regionals. And that's where I first saw him. And that kind of is what got me into it. But we've been married now so 2013, we got married in 2019. We've been married for a little over 6 years. So we're going on year 7. With actually being married. And it's been great.
Kristi, I was going to ask you on that note, because I was listening to the podcast that you and Patrick recorded, recapping the race. And correct me if I'm wrong, he coaches you to prep for this race. Is he your coach or no?
Yeah, so he wouldn't call himself my coach, but what he is he's the voice of reason that I need. So he did coach me in CrossFit, and that was extremely helpful. And it was very challenging at times, but he is not a runner. I would say, Jason, he's more like you, where he'll run 3 miles and his legs are so heavy. It's like, Chrissy, they're concrete bricks.
I hear you, Patrick. I relate to you.
Yeah. And I'm like, what do you mean they're concrete bricks? Like, I don't understand. And so we had this conversation a lot, but he is extremely knowledgeable, and we've been together for so long. He's watched me and he's helped me, and he always knows the right things to say. And we'll draw out the training plans, and he will look at them, just kind of as another level, and he'll help me pull myself back if I need to pull myself back. He'll just kind of talk through me like, how are you feeling? And so it's just kind of having that voice of reason and kind of keeping me in my lane and not doing either too much or kind of deviating from that. So I wouldn't say he's necessarily my coach when it comes to running. That's not really his expertise, but he was very, very good in the gym. And so he'll still continue to help with the strength training aspect. But it's more of just kind of like, he supports me really well. And even heading into this race, it's like you need somebody who you can count on, who supports you, who's there through everything, good, bad, thick, thin, everything. He's always there. And it's just that person that I can count on. And I was really nervous for this one. And he was like, Kristi, you've done so many hard things in your life. You're going to get into this and realize I've done harder things than this. Like mentally, I am prepared. It's like little things that he'll just say that just really help. And then also just giving me the push and the shove, like on the days that I'm kind of dragging my feet, it's like helping me remember my why. If I'm dragging, it's just that support system that I think everybody needs, whether it's a significant other, a best friend, a gym community, whatever, having that support system can go a long way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the reason I ask is, like there's many things when it comes to training specifically that my wife will call me out on, and it's kind of like, and then, your coach or someone that you're working with or, a good friend of mine in the fitness space will tell me the same thing. And then I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. And there's kind of that aspect of different relationships being able to, I guess, talk to you about different things. So I was wondering what that dynamic is kind of like if he was, your coach and writes your programming and that stuff. But it seems like you guys have kind of delineated it well, where he's a support system and just kind of a sounding board, but not necessarily a coach. So you would say that you coach yourself, like you're doing your programming, you're writing out your stuff. Cool.
Yeah. For all the running, I just spend a ton of time reading, learning, looking at what other people have done, and just kind of trying to put all of that data together, and then looking at all of my past data. And so just I really like data. Like I think data tells you so much. And so I love keeping track of all of that. And so that's just been interesting for me. But yeah, in the gym, he definitely was. And that was harder because it would be very challenging to listen at times, even though I knew he was right. But it's like I needed to hear it from somebody else for it to actually make sense, or for me to accept it. And so I also think growing and maturing in the relationship that we have, that we've just come a really long way. Like there were times in the start in the gym where I would just be like, no. And then somebody would say the same thing. And I'm like, okay, I got it. Like I understand. And so I think it's just everybody goes through that probably. But yeah, it's with the running specifically, it's just a lot of reading and learning and just trying to gather as much data as I possibly can.
I want to give a
I love the data side of endurance stuff.
Here we
It
go.
is
Here we
the
go.
fact that
You
it's
two-
just like like you're basically solving a math problem in reverse, and it's so fun. Anyway, I just needed to point that out.
You guys both in the data.
Data,
both in the
data.
data.
I
Oh
say
man.
funny things.
I want to give a shout out to Patrick. Just listening to the way you spoke, I think for all the guys that are listening to this podcast, I think you should take a quick pause and like kind of reflect on what Chrissy was just saying in the sense that like the way you shared about your husband and the way that he supports you in the moments that he is able to just give a little that can just take you through to that next stage. That's powerful. That's really powerful. And I think that's something we could listen to in the sense like, I think what I'm learning more and more, my wife and I have been together for a really long time, but it's like sometimes they just want to talk and share what's going on, and they don't necessarily want you to share they just want someone to share what's going on in their lives, and they want you to listen, and they want you to listen to them and not necessarily try and fix it. But when they need that moment of encouragement, that little bit, like right now, my wife she's when this releases, it'll already have happened. But right now, my wife is deep in planning for an annual fundraiser we do for pediatric cancer. She's deep in it. And so a lot of times she'll ask me stuff, but she doesn't necessarily want me to solve anything. She just wants to share what's going on. And I just need to be able to listen and then give encouragement. I think you gave a great example of that. I'm curious on that note, coming from the gym, working, you guys work together as well?
Yes, we do.
So working together,
Yeah.
obviously living together, training, right? I'm curious some of the things that you guys have had to kind of work through. You know, it's tough because especially as you compete at the CrossFit Games, I imagine there's moments of high intensity and maybe even some adversity. And what kind of guardrails or what kind of system you guys set up maybe afterwards to communicate better? Because I'm sure that that communication tool set could then translate into real life really well as well.
Yeah, that's honestly for us like a huge work in process, and we've grown and matured, but I think that we both think very differently. And that is something that we've had to learn about our relationship and both kind of stop and try to look from a different frame of reference. So how if we're not seeing eye to eye on something, which there's a lot of moments on that, like the way I'm really into the data and things like that, like he might not see as much of that, or that we both do very different things. And so as far as working together, we've split our responsibilities. So it's kind of like, where do my strengths lie? I work on those things. Where do his strengths lie? He works on those things. And then we will come together. But if we're not seeing eye to eye, it's kind of just stepping back. Like sometimes we're not yelling or screaming at each other. It's just kind of like, okay, what is it that he's not able to comprehend? Or what is it that I'm not understanding or that he's saying? And so it's kind of just taking that moment to step back. And sometimes for me, it's like, could be as simple as going out for a walk or just, taking just a little bit of space to kind of work through and process that and then come back to the table and see, okay, here's where I'm a little bit hung up or where my frustrations lie, and just having actual conversations. And I think that throughout this entire process, it's also being able to recognize certain things for myself. I had to take a step back and say, okay, how much sleep did I get last night? Am I exhausted from training? Am I making this little molehill into this massive mountain? And so sometimes it's having the self-awareness. And so starting with myself, because a lot of times when I was in those high intensity periods of training, even with this marathon at times, there's times that I was very tired. And if you're unaware, unable to recognize that, it could be affecting how you're responding to that relationship. And so for me, it's just kind of learning these things over time and just kind of having a checklist to go through and be like, okay, if I had gotten a good night's sleep, would I still feel this way? Would we potentially be having this conversation? And, he's aware of those things too. He'll ask himself those same things, but it's kind of just having the wherewithal to kind of step back, kind of go through your little checklist, and then also look at it from the other person's perspective and see if that can help. And I think that's something that we both continued to work on and done a good job. But communication is something that we're constantly working on in our marriage and in our business and everything that we do. And I think that the better we learn to communicate, the better things are. But it's not ever easy, especially as people continue to grow and change.
That's for sure. I want, because you alluded to it, I just want to talk about this idea from Echelon Front, that's Jocko's company and Leif. They have this idea of detachment. And I just thought, because you brought it up, I thought it's a good example, is that they share this idea that you should detach. You said go out for a walk, but it's a similar idea where you detach from your ego, your emotion, your perspective, And I think that going out for a walk or taking a deep breath, it allows you to take a moment to kind of ask yourself, hey, am I detaching from these three things? Am I looking at it through a different lens, a different perspective? Am I not being emotional? And is my ego getting in the way? So they say detach from your ego, your emotion, your perspective. And that's something I'm working on every single day. When something comes up, can I take a deep breath, detach, and then look at it through those different lenses? So I wanted to share that because that's exactly what you were saying.
Yeah. And I think the deep breath is huge. Like just stopping. And I like the box breathing where I'll just like sometimes take when I say box breathing, 3 seconds in, 3 seconds pause, 3 seconds out, and just hold and just kind of be still for a second and instead of being so reactive. And so that's exactly. And I think that can really help. And that's a skill in life that, we worked on that in challenges in gyms before, is like spend 10 minutes box breathing when you wake up in the morning and just see how that can change your day. And so it's just being able to apply these things into your life so you can show up for yourself. But when you show up for yourself, you also can show up for your significant other and people in your life as well.
Mm.
It can also be such a double-edged sword. Obviously you're spending a lot of time together because you operate the business together. But at least based on the content I've seen, it looks like a lot of the training is happening at home in the garage and stuff. So it's a little bit of, it's nice that you get that when you have a digital business or a, at home job to be that close, but it's also tough because the separation isn't built in, right? Like you're not going to do something over there. Patrick's going to do something over there, and you kind of have that time to think you have to be very intentional about it. You have to say, hey, I'm going to remove myself and go for a walk because it's not just built into your lifestyle. You guys are basically you're working, you're training, you're doing everything under one roof, for lack of a better term. And that can make it really tough. And it's definitely something that I have to be very aware of because, I have my office, but it's right next to home. Sometimes even though I want to run back in there and help Ariel at the end of the day with the kids, it's almost better for me to take just 5 minutes to create a little bit of time. I'm super fortunate and grateful that I don't have a commute, but that separation is almost like something you need to build in to just kind of leave the energy of work and potentially the stress here and go over there and show up completely differently because that's a completely different role. So definitely grateful that, we get to do everything under one roof, but it has its challenges for sure.
Yeah, I work downstairs. He works upstairs.
Oh.
We have a couple days that we do workouts together. I'll go do I did Pilates the other day with my sister and a bunch of girls. And so it's you have your time, he'll go do things with his friends or whatever. And it's you need that time, that separate time. And it's extremely, extremely important. You cannot do everything together and we can't train together every single day. And you do need your space. And so I can relate to that 100%. And then when you do get to come together at the end of the night, you have more to talk about, how was your day? We carve out that time that it's not work related, that it's not training related, that it's nothing. And it's just kind of us getting back to our roots. And I think that has been something that is also extremely, extremely important.
When are we getting Patrick into jiu-jitsu?
I actually been asking. We have one not far, and he watches he got me into watching the mixed martial arts stuff. And so, yeah, I know.
All right.
He really needs to do that.
Tell him maybe this is a sign. Hey, I was on a podcast with this guy, Jason. He's dude, and I encourage him. It is a game changer. If you, especially anybody listening to this, we talk about jiu-jitsu all the time on the show. But I just think, especially if you come from a CrossFit background, you're looking to kind of switch up your training a little bit and add in some variety. I think jiu-jitsu just opens your brain, opens your mind. It's like a game of chess. I think Patrick would really like it. I think you might like it once you get out of your kind of marathon focus, because that would definitely take you away from those goals for sure.
Yeah, I've never heard of it referred to as a game of chess, but that sounds like something he would really enjoy. But yeah, I will definitely pass that on because there's a big community 100%. Aspect as well from what I've heard him say.
Yeah, it's 100% a game of chess. It's someone's trying, you're trying to move them, they're trying to move you, you're trying to do this, you're trying to do this. It's if you're really into your own mind and want to it's just,
very cool.
Not to derail, but let's get them in there.
I will definitely pass that on. And then I'll let you know when he finally gets into it.
All right. Perfect. Well,
Kristi, I did have just one more training question. I know we're coming up to the end of the hour, but I'm super curious, since you have so much experience and you've clearly done so much work trying to educate yourself on this stuff, is when mixing strength training and all of this auxiliary stuff with running, like what in your mind are most runners not doing enough of? And this could be a whole other conversation in itself. So, I'm sorry to jam it in here just at the end, but I'm curious, just like if you were to boil it down to like, hey, these are the musts that you should be doing in the gym as a runner, even if your primary goal is the running performance, what would those things be?
Yeah, I think lifting weights and not being afraid to pick up something heavier than a 10, 15, or 20 pound dumbbell. So primary compound lifts, like you're going to get a ton out of that if you know how to do it. If not, like seek out a gym and somebody who can teach you how to do that properly, because you're going to get so much strength from that, but also injury prevention. It's going to keep you're stable, you're strong. And so starting with those primary compound lifts, so squat, deadlift for the glutes and the hamstrings, bench press, and then also, bench press. Like we want to be strong all around. And then single leg work and plyometrics. So single leg work, just if you think about running, you're taking single leg steps over and over. And so it's making sure that you are strong and you are working those imbalances and that your glute is firing the way that it should and your adductors are strong. And a lot of times, if we're not doing that single leg work, then we're missing that in our training. And then plyometrics as well. So it's going to strengthen our calves, our Achilles. It's going to make you more resilient. So I think those three things are going to be, they're not going to take away from your running. They're only going to make you stronger. And they're going to also help prevent injury. And I think that for most people is what they deal with when it comes to running that higher mileage. You want to bulletproof your body so you can continue to do what you love. And if that's running, then that's going to be a great way to do that.
Love it. And the proof's in the pudding. It's so interesting to hear you go through a similar arc in that you were able to run faster, not even just this race, but the one you did prior when Patrick ran his half, after being away from the endurance game for so long and doing a bunch of strength training, a bunch of CrossFit, and be faster. Me coming back into running now, I didn't get to run the actual marathon, but just in my training runs, I got to the point where I was faster when I was just a triathlete and just doing endurance stuff. So it's cool to see that not only can you do both, but there's actually, some synergies there, and you can definitely improve one with the other. So super cool. I really wanted you to share that.
Yeah. It's been eye-opening. So I hope that more people continue to find both, because there's so many positive benefits and they can really play off of each other to help you feel your best. And so I'm excited
100%.
to see more people lifting weights as runners. And I'm excited to see more weightlifters getting into, a little bit more running and just challenging themselves, either whether it's in the gym or on the pavement. And I think it's really cool and exciting.
Gabe, maybe I got to sign up for, I'll sign up for like a 10K or something like that. We did start. Hey, at least I did the High Rocks. So
yes.
Are you, by the way, last little thing, are you planning on doing a High Rocks?
I don't have any on the books right now. So I did the one solo last March, and that was just, I want to see what it's about, and I want to be part of the community.
How long did it take you?
That one took me 1 hour and 4 minutes. And then I did the doubles in Dallas. So actually, Patrick and I came over and cheered for you guys at one point. You didn't see us, but you guys were on the rower. And so it was really fun because I didn't know you all were going to be there. So it was really cool to float around and see you guys competing as well.
So just for the record, Kristi beat Gabe and I's time as an individual, and we were pairs and got 106, and she casually just threw in that she got a 104. So yeah, man. All right. Next time, Gabe and I, we're going sub 1 hour. That's the goal.
Heck yeah.
We'll see. Kristi, we really appreciate you for people who want to check out more about what you have going on with, your journey with races, with everything else. Where's the best place for people to go check you out?
You can follow on YouTube. We do a lot of stuff about the races on there. So nice. The YouTube channel is Kristi Eramo O'Connell. So Eramo is actually my maiden name. And then my Instagram is still at Kristi Eramo. And then our fitness is at Ibex Training.
Love it. Love it. Well, appreciate you. Really, really appreciate everybody for checking out the show. As per usual, right? We love having guests on this show. We always get great insight from them. Share the insight with a friend. Share the podcast with a friend. Let them know that you got value out of it. Leave the podcast a rating and review, and keep training hard.